I call this bike Fugly for obvious reasons. You also think of it, it's a hybrid from a Scott. My Scott fell apart. There's the spare bits. There's almost no Scott left in it now, so maybe it's a Snot, not a Scott, or maybe it's a Trot, a Trek and a Scott, or maybe it's a Screk, a Scott and a Trek, but maybe Snot's best. Got here is the old school 9-speed stuff, so it's a 3x9, so front derailleur, rear derailleur. Rear derailleur is actually new, it's part of my spare kit for my old fat bike. Cluster I think is okay. Chain I've just noticed is a bit worn, but I've got some new 9-speed stuff, spares, I'll throw those in. If you get any problems with gear change, that's usually down to this bit of cable at the back. So that's not from the old Scott, nor is that. Chain wheels are from the Scott, so you've got 3 chain wheels there, and you can tell that I go over drops with my left foot forward because these teeth in the chain wheel are missing. They've been ground off. Not a problem, there's plenty more. Yeah. The chain wheel's fairly worn, as are the cranks. Front derailleur is new cable, that should be fine. Worth thinking about this, like almost you've got 3 gearboxes, so you've got a low ratio, medium ratio and high ratio. So low for the hills, medium for the flats, big ring for the downhills, and you've got to think about when you change, same as in a car, you've got to actually, not stop because you can't change when you aren't pedaling, but you need to get that low ratio one in before you hit the hill. Controls. Right hand front brake, XT. Bloody brilliant XT hydraulic brakes. I've bled these once in 8 years. I don't think I'll need to. Left brake is rear. Generally speaking, you want to favour the front brake, and that feels odd in some circumstances, but riding a bike, 3 things about riding a bike: go where you look, front wheel's everything, and fortune favours the bold. So if the front wheel's everything, so you want to be doing most of your braking on that, probably more than half. Carbon bars from the old Scott, I hope they hold together. Shifters, the cassette, the 9, is on the right hand side. Click to go up the block, easier gear, pull towards you to go down the block, harder gear. You can also push up, no you can't on these, so pull towards you, up, down, rings are on the left hand side, see, but again, a big push on those, and you want to get those in fairly early. So that's brakes, should be fine. I've no longer got any more of this kit, but I've got some spare brake shoes, so brake pads, so I'll give you those. This here is I'm starting to split the cable. It's a seat lowering device, so if you press that you can sit down in the seat, and the seat goes down, and so that's kind of handy getting out of the way when you're going over drops. So Crank Brothers dropper post, you push the lever down, you can descend it, push the lever up, it comes up. So this is a fairly new Trek fuel frame, and people like the Trek fuels. This is a 26-inch, now they're making with bigger wheels, but it's still quite highly rated. Fairly new, so headset bearings, fairly new, you should have no trouble with those. Bottom bracket bearings, again, pretty new, I have no trouble with those. There's pivot bearings and all these guys. I don't think you're ever going to need to change those. This is the rear shock, so because people vary in weight, mountain bikes come with air shocks. So there's a cap here, and it's a normal car style valve, but at extremely high pressure, like 200 psi, so don't put your car pump on There's a table you'll see on the interweb that tells you what weight you should have and what air pressure you need for what weight, and that's kind of starting point. There's also an O-ring here, and if you want to do it really nice, you can measure your sag on there. You know, you sit on the bike, put the O-ring up, come off the bike smoothly, and measure how many mil of sag you've got there. You can set it that way. There's a control here which is, in theory, lockout, trail riding and downhill mode. Doesn't it work? So I don't know why. Now at the front here is something from the original Scott, and it's completely fucked. Well, not entirely, it actually still works. But Fox, Talus, fork, air spring this side, damping on this side, damping leg is fine. On the air spring side, I've worn through the coating on the stanchion, and there's, you can't really see that, but there's black paste monsters crawling up the stanchion, which is kind of unfortunate. So that's, you can't escape from that. That's dead. So wheels, discs on the front 180mm, disc on the back 160. You'll not have any trouble with these. XT brakes, absolutely brilliant. I've got some spare pads for these. I've not any more of these, so we'll have the spares. With the pads, as soon as they start looking at least a bit worn, I just change them out. So I don't buy the Shimano ones. I get cheap ones from Clark's, and they're about, I don't know, $7 a pair. So cheapest chips work fine. When they get a bit worn, get rid of them. Wheels. Now, you will get some comments about these wheels, because these are 45mm Umas, imported from Alaska, built by my own fair hands, and used in the patent tubeless system. Very strong set of wheels, cheap although very good XT hubs, old cup and cone, you'll have no issue with those. With the tubeless, I'll take you some sealant, but there's a core remover here, and the test for those is when you shake the wheel, if you can't hear fluid moving around, you need to put some more in. Probably 4 out of 5 flats you get on tubeless are just because you run out of sealant. Air pressures in these, you can run pretty low. I start around 20, but you can go lower than that to get some more grip. As a rule of thumb, well, you'll feel it on the back wheel. If you go too low, you'll start thumping the rim, and you feel that because it's a sudden sharp thump. So run them at 20 to start off with. Don't be afraid to lose some. You might come down to 15 in the front, 20 in the back. And as a rule of thumb, if you're bashing the rim like once a day of riding, that's probably about right. If you're bashing it more often than that, you need some more air. If you're not bashing it at all, you can afford to lose some air and get a bit more grip and a bit more compliance going. Back end, same deal. 160 rotor. This pivot, this clamp is a bit odd. It's not standard because of the APB stuff, so it's not a normal quick release skewer, it's slightly longer. It looks like it's a through axle, it's really not. It's just a skewer that goes through. At the top tips, if you're taking the wheel out, just change onto the smallest cog first. It makes it easier to put it back in again. Now, seats are a very personal thing. I like the SMPs, and I always ride the SMPs. Top tip with any seat, well, so when you start riding, you're going to get a baboon's ass. That's just a given, yeah. And it happens if I don't ride for a long period of time. You just get bruised, yeah. So you're going to have to give it a few hours or weeks to actually get your bum used to this. These got a very big cutout, which I kind of like. You always want the nose of the seat to be lower than the back. So what I normally do is if I balance a 5mm Allen key on there and put a level on it, I make sure that the front is about 5mm lower than the back. Now if you still get numb nuts, you want to lower the front a bit more, you might get a 7mm or 8mm. And the vast majority of fasteners on a bike are all torqued to 5mm, so kind of all these 4mm, 5mm bolt are all torqued up to 5mm to 5 Newton meters. Even so, the Trek give you an extra tool to go and torque them up.